to the apocalypse and greetings. This is the Underground Report here, coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the heart of the dumpster fire we call the city. And thank you for coming back this week. I have a very interesting heavy-duty report for you today. It's not going to be easy today, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. We're going to talk about how our educational system has mentally captured our kids and how they've done it and why. So buckle up. This is going to be a very interesting study into the past and to some current stuff that we're going through right now. As always, look below into the comments, and I can give you links down there. I usually like to do it in the comments rather than the description because it kind of helps us to slide through some of the censorship that's been going on. And what else I'm going to do is in the description, I'll put all the references that we go to today so that you can have them for yourself for your own research. Okay, let's get into it. I don't know about you guys, but when I was a kid, there was a movie, and it was called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It was put out by Disney, and there was a character in that movie that I was terrified of, and other children too. I remember watching it on the television because back in those days we didn't have the, the DVD, DVR, things like that we have nowadays, Netflix. We didn't have any of that. So every year we waited until certain movies came on, and this was one of the movies. I remember seeing this character and just being terrified. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put our graphics up here for you guys to see. What it was the deal is that the car Chitty Chitty Bang Bang had landed in this country called Bulgaria, and there was in charge a baron there and a baroness who the baron himself wanted to be a child, and he loved toys. He rode around on this big giant kind of hobby horse thing, and the baroness didn't like children. So what they had done is they had this guy that they employed called the child catcher, and the character of the child catcher wore black. He had a black top hat, and he carried around this big giant net. There were no children that you could see in the streets of Bulgaria, and all of the people who were in character very much German. The little town was very much German, and they even said that this character was a bit of anti-Semitism because of who he represented, just by his looks. So you can decide for that, and you can also study up on that if you so wish, but we won't get into that today. So the deal was the adults wanted to be children. That's freaky enough as it is, guys. But at the same time, they were taking children and they were capturing them and they were taking them off the streets because the kids were illegal. So these children that were captured were hidden, and this child catcher was trying to lure them out. He had candy that he had in his hand, and he had this colorful wagon that he told them, you're going to have ice cream, you're going to have candy. And so the children ended up running out, and they ended up running into the wagon, which the sides fell away, and it became a trap, and it was a giant cage. So that was terrifying in itself. So what we're talking about today is the programming of our children. All good dictatorships know that if you can program the children, that you could have the entire future. So that's why they focus on the children. They focus on the kiddie catcher or the child catcher sort of mentality of luring these kids and molding their minds through the educational system and teaching them what they want them to be, because when they grow up, they'll just immediately fall into it. There was an interesting quote by Hitler who said, "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." And that was written in the book Mein Kampf, and like Hitler, Marxist liberals follow along the same path. They are the ones that are taking over our educational systems. They've been doing it since the 60s and possibly before, but the 60s especially. What some of these radicals did, Saul Alinsky in his book The Rules for Radicals kind of put out the different steps on how to capture a society through socialism. Socialism is a very soft definition for communism. Marxist is also the same thing. So when people say socialism, it's kind of a soft form so that it's easy for you to digest and easy for the kids to digest. But in reality, there really is no socialism, and it really is communism in disguise. So the Marxists knew this, and they knew the way to remain in power was to recruit young people. So what they did is they took a process of psychological conditioning in America's public schools. And like Hitler, Lenin, and Mao, these tactics continue until this day, and I'll show you some of that right now. What happened during the 60s is you had some real radical people. You had people that were anti-American, they were pro-communist, and what they did was they decided, well, you know, bombing is one thing, and bombing is effective, but what we really should do is become professors in major colleges, because that way we can mold the minds of our kids. And then we can wait it out. We can be very patient. We can wait a couple generations, and we can produce in the educational system a society of people who will go along with our views and will have the entire future, which is exactly what they did. Barack Obama was also a disciple of Saul Alinsky. Hillary Clinton was a disciple of Saul Alinsky and his Rules for Radicals. They both considered him a mentor, and in fact, Hillary Clinton went on to write an entire dissertation on Saul Alinsky, and she was quite a disciple of his, and so was Barack Obama, which Barack Obama brought along a lot of his radical views. He was taught by radical parents, his mother, and also one of the men that he was mentored by, but we won't get into him because we're talking about kids right now. You can study that on your own. It's very easily found on the web. Okay, so we want to ask ourselves the question, what's going on in our schools right now? What is being taught to our kids? One of the very interesting twists in this has been our health, quote unquote, health situation right now, where children are being trained. Look around you. If you will see, the children are putting on masks themselves. The mothers go around and they have a little train of little children behind them with these masks on, when in reality children have a very low, if nothing, effects of what's happening right now during this pandemic. They will tell you they do, but their own CDC information refutes that and says that children are not passing this thing, are not, you know, carrying this thing, and pretty much are unsymptomatic at all. So why all of the programming? I'm going to show you some pretty devastating pictures of what our educational system is doing to our kids. They are taking our kids from kindergarten, and we're talking about 5-year-olds here, all the way to 12th grade. They are teaching them masking mandates, which means whenever they're in the presence of other students, they have to have a mask on. Now, I'm going to tell you that I was a teacher for several years. I taught preschool, and then I taught the upper grades when I was a librarian. I taught junior high art. I taught all the way up to 12th grade when I was in the library about books and reading and authors. And I can tell you that little children, their identification face-to-face is very important as part of their socialization. So you want to ask yourselves, what are they trying to implement, and what effects is this going to have on our children for future generations? These kids who are used to identifying emotions and identifying other children, and who are socializing, are having none of that because there's a barrier being put up in front of them. They're keeping them apart through distancing. They're being told to follow the guidelines, exclamation mark, follow the guidelines. From the time they get to school, they're put on a line. They're being told to stand on a line. They're being told to stand on dots, sit on dots, distance from your friends, don't take your mask off. They're being told to report their parents for certain aspects that don't go along with school guidelines and school ideas. They're being told that, hey, you have a choice. You can get a medical procedure done without your parents' consent. Okay? That is unheard of until now. And I want you to ask yourself why. Why is this being pushed on them? Why are they being trained? Why are they being told to be afraid? Why are they being taught to distance from other people and not socialize? Ask yourself these questions. Is it for health? Is it? Or is it for another more sinister purpose? We're going to get into more of that in a second. Okay, I'm going to put up some quotes here for you to read. The first quote I'm going to put up is by Grace Llewellyn. She was an educator, and what happened was she was all excited about being a teacher in school. She soon found out that the programming going on in schools was anti-learning, anti-individualism. And this is a quote from her. I'm going to put it up here for you to read. Grace Llewellyn, who also wrote Guerrilla Learning, is learning outside of the school systems. You can look her up. I'm going to put her name up here for you too. It says, all the time you are in school, you learn through experience how to live in a dictatorship. That's a very interesting quote. I learned that as well. Here's why. You're taught to follow a line. You're taught to do what you're told without question, especially now. Because when you question and you break the rules, you get kicked out of school, you get in trouble. So you don't want to end up that way. So the second quote we're going to look at is a quote from Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. He was anti-American, he was pro-socialist, and he wrote a book called Rules for Radicals to train his people how to bring in a socialist dictatorship into America. Okay, so here is the quote from him about school. He said, and I'm going to put it up here, take control of what people read and what people listen to. Now, what does that sound like? That sounds like mainstream media. He's taking control of what you read. That's online right now. People don't read books or newspapers quite as often anymore. I do. But most people are reading little sound bites, little few minutes here and there on social media, and they believe it. They don't research. So he said, taking control of what people read and what people listen to. Take control of what children learn in school. Why do you think that is? Because you're building future socialists. You're building future radicals. You're building future people who are going to change the world around you to what you want it to be. Okay? Our next quote is from Aldous Huxley. He's the one who wrote Brave New World. I suggest that you put that on your reading list. It had to do with a dictatorship, very much along the lines of George Orwell. And so here's what, in 1984, here's what he had to say, and I'll put it up here. He said, the older dictators fell because they could never supply their subjects with enough bread, enough circuses, enough miracles and mysteries. Now he's referring a lot to the Romans who used to try to keep the mob, who they called the mob, which was the general population, happy with all of these things. Entertainment, games, bread, circuses. They even had a lottery like we do now where they would give people money. Okay, so under a scientific dictatorship, education will really work with the result that most men and women will grow up to love their servitude and will never dream of revolution. There seems to be no good reason why a thoroughly scientific dictatorship should ever be overthrown. Aldous Huxley. Now, question yourself. What did he say there that applies to what we're doing right now? He said a scientific dictatorship. What are we hearing now? Trust the science. Believe the science. Really? Don't believe your eyes. Don't believe what you're seeing. Believe what we tell you. Just like what the I don't know what you would call her, a governor over in New Zealand said, we are your main source of truth. Everything else is just a conspiracy theory. Look to us. We are the ones that are telling you what to do. And what are they doing this week? Arresting women mothers who are talking to each other with a mask on in a park, they're arresting them. And they're charging them $1,000 for some kind of ticket they're giving them. And yet we're supposed to go to her for truth. I say bull crap. I say you research, you study on your own, you think for yourself, and you apply critical thinking, people. Don't just go with what you're told. Okay, even as far as science goes, do your own research. This is your body, not theirs. This is your forever, not theirs. Okay, so what are they teaching in schools right now? Let's apply it to right now. What are they teaching? They're teaching critical race theory that says all the rules are made by people who are prejudiced and racist. Are they? Are they? Are they made by people who are prejudiced and racist? I ask you that. You find out. You answer that question. They're teaching them LGBT agenda. Training begins with teachers and forces out those who do not comply. If you do not comply with the agenda, like Llewellyn, like Grace Llewellyn, then you are edged out. It's only the teachers who are trained and complying are the ones that are able to teach the children. This is criminal, okay? This is saying that if you do not follow along with our agenda, you are edged out. Means that you will be fired, you will be ridiculed, you will be belittled. I don't know. Some of the teachers' unions, you aren't able to be fired unless they have a severe reason for it. But at the same time, you're going to put up with a lot of stuff. You're going to put up with things that you don't want to teach in class. That got me out of a lot of teaching jobs, I guess. I got out of that, and I didn't want to be, in a bookstore reading children books that I was given to read them that I didn't agree with. So I taught my kids a lot at home. They went to public schools, but I did teach them a lot at home. And I would say to you parents out there, you are the source of education for your kids, not the state, not the system, not any kind of theory that the social justice warriors are pushing onto you. Not sexualization in kindergarten. Are you even kidding? These kids are playing in a sandbox. They don't care about that right now. They don't even care what color each other are. They just care if you're my friend and you're going to play with me in the sand today. This does not need to be taught to our children. You can teach them how to not bully each other. That's fine. You can teach them to get along and treat each other kindly. That's fine. That's socialization. They learn that. They learn that by working together and learning together. But they don't need to be indoctrinated, guys. Indoctrinated with these ideas. That's criminal. Okay? So we are going to look and see what Jesus said about that. Jesus said about that, and I'm going to put the scripture down here for you to read and up here. He was very serious when it came to children. He took one of them in front of the other adults, and they were asking him, who's greatest in the kingdom of heaven? He said, give me one of these kids. He brought the kid over to him, and he said, if you do not become like this little child, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. What did that mean? That meant that he had a childlike love in his heart, the child did, and a belief in God and a belief in Jesus. And he had a love for other people. So, among other things, okay, that's certainly not a comprehensive view of the entire event. But I'm going to read to you from Matthew 18, and this is verse number 10. I'm going to put it down here and I'm going to put it up here. If you do not have a Bible, if you've never read your Bible, hey man, we are so glad you're here. Thank you for coming, and just read along with us. And so Matthew 18, starting in verse 10, it says, take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones. Okay, he's talking to kids. For I say to you that in heaven, their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. For the Son of Man has come to save that which is lost. That is very important because he was serious about these little ones. He's talking about people who don't care if they're children, but they're teaching them an agenda. They're not taking into consideration that these little babies trust everything they say. He's saying, don't despise them. Don't just discount them as being little ones and teaching them whatever you want. They come before me. I see them. Therefore, you are held accountable for whatever it is that you teach these little ones. He also said, let's skip up and let's skip back to verse 6. It says, whoever causes one of these little ones to believe in me to sin. It means to go against God's word and go against things that are of humanity, okay? It says, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck. And I'm going to put a picture up here of what a millstone is for you so that you see it. And he were drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of offenses of these little ones. For offenses must come, but woe to the man, or that man, by whom the offense comes. He was dead serious about little ones, and I'm telling you, whoever brings this stuff on these little kids, they are held to account, and big time. So, these words that he was talking about in Matthew 18, 6 and 10 dealt with snaring children, like our child catcher, with their minds or luring them in, trapping them, or causing a stumbling block. This can easily be done through education. This is an abuse. This is an abuse of children, making them distance from their friends, making them wear these things over their face continually all day long so they're not getting oxygen, making them stand on these lines drawn on the ground, making them continually scrub their hands with chemicals. Have you ever thought of what some of these chemicals contain and what they're doing to the children's immune system for the future? Have you ever thought about that? Instead of dousing your kids with constant chemicals, how about soap and water, like we've been taught? Just a thought. And then from there on, they're told to sit in these spaced apart desks. They're you know, and their teacher is covered from head to toe with some kind of mask and some kind of something over her face so that they can't see her face. That is abuse. That is imprinting on their minds that this is our real world. What do you think is going to happen to them? They're going to be afraid of everything. They're not going to be able to communicate. They're not going to be able to be intimate with other people because they're going to be afraid. They're going to be oh, we have to stand apart. Oh, I have to be afraid of so-and-so. So these people are going to be held to account. What happened during the Third Reich is the Third Reich Ministry of Education took over control of the system in 1934, completely took it over, overhauled it, and then came to the National Socialist Teachers League. Now, if you look now in some of these protests, you will see these teachers always wearing red shirts. Very interesting. I'll get a picture up here for you. You look at the teachers that are protesting, and they're all wearing red shirts. What is the color of communism? Just asking. Okay, so they've got the National Socialist Teachers League that they put in the Third Reich. This meant that the teachers were trained how to teach the children, and the teachers that did not agree were edged out and took out. Okay, so the Nazi ideology replaced history. What are we doing now? We're tearing down statues, replacing history. We are, even though some history is abhorrent, that doesn't mean you erase it, because what is going to replace it is something different than what really happened. So pay attention to that. It's going to be taught. They replaced history, literature, and outright lies in science. Very interesting. They replaced science. What was their science? They taught that the white race was, you know, more pure, or, you know, whatever the eugenics they were teaching at that time. Okay? Children saluted teachers and were encouraged to follow the program without question. You do not question science. Okay? Those tactics plus the youth programs were for ages, guess what? Kindergarten through 12th grade, ages 5, 6 to 18. Exactly what we're modeling right now in our school systems. They were taught to little children then, all the way up to when they were done with school. The youth programs, the Hitler Youth, started with the little guys. They had their own little camp when they were younger, when they were, you know, the lower grades. And then when you got older, you went to Hitler Youth. They separated the girls from the boys. They taught the boys to be military. They taught the girls how to be domestic and nurses. And then they got to be older and they were actually put into the military. Children who showed more promise were taken and they were put in different programs. So what am I telling you today? What am I telling you guys? I'm telling you that the enemy of your soul, the true evil, has an agenda for children. He is the ultimate child catcher. He wants to capture your children's minds. And in some of the pagan religions, in some of the old religions, it talks about in the Bible as well, do not pass your child through the fire. They were sacrificing some of their kids to a god named Moloch, where they would start a big fire, and this statue had hands that were open, and they would place their babies in the hands of this tall statue, and they would burn them to death. But that also can mean another thing. Passing through your child through the fire mentally could mean also that they're being reprogrammed. Okay? I was a teacher for many years. And my children were in the school system at that time, but what we did is we took the things that they learned, we brought them home and we talked about them, and we used them as teaching lessons. How does this apply to our set of values? How does this, how do you learn to get along with other people? How do you treat them kindly? How do you treat them with respect? We talked a lot about school and situations, and my kids were encouraged to come home and talk about it. We talked about their day. And I encourage you to do the same thing if they were in public school. If you ask me now, if my kids were small, I would not have them in public education at all. I would do everything I could to get them out of there. I would homeschool them with a good program. There's plenty of good programs. If you cannot do that, if you cannot afford that, get a co-op. Find a co-op of parents that believe like you do or have the same ideas about the schools as you do, who want to get together and maybe take turns teaching the kids, a small group of kids, order curriculum. If you've got to work and you've got to, what's more important to you? Your children's mind and your children's future, or material things? Question. You might have to cut back. You might have to tighten that belt a little bit and not live in a giant house. And you might have to take some cuts to be able to save your kids. But let me tell you, you are held accountable for your children. God gave them to you. You're held accountable, not the school systems. You should be knowing what they're teaching your kids. You should be reading their homework. You should be going over it with your kids. What did you learn today? What were you taught today? And let me tell you something. If you're putting a mask on your kid and you're delivering them over to the school system without question, then you're going to be held account to that too. Don't tell me that your kindergartner is coming home telling you about critical race theory and telling you that you are a white supremacist, that you are the problem, and that America is a terrible place, and America is this and that. Don't cry to us. Don't cry to me. Don't cry to anybody else, because you're the one that's handing them over to Rome. Don't expect them not to be a Roman. Trust me. And when you don't agree with them and you get turned in for your ideas, don't cry about it. They've become a Roman. Okay? Jesus was serious about little kids, and you should be too if you have them. And if you don't have them, if you're a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, whoever, pray for those kids. And when they're in your presence, talk to them. Try to make a difference. Try to make a difference to children around you. This has been a heavy-duty subject, so thank you for today. And with that, may the Lord keep you. May the Lord bless you. Until the next time I talk to you, I pray for your children. If you do not have a relationship with God, consider it. I would say it's the best decision that you can ever make, because he is real. He's made himself real to me in a way that I can understand. I didn't believe in God, and I asked him to show me, and he did. So I suggest that for you, you could do the exact same thing. You can write to me, you can ask me questions, you can ask me for any kind of links to information. I can give that to you too. Please do your own research. And this is Little Wing 1 for this week, signing out with this report. Next report, we have a very interesting one as well, so be sure to tune in. So with that, I will talk to you next week. This is Little Wing 1, signing out. Bye-bye.